Hey everyone, this is Scrap Computer here. This video is going to cover the new Korean Lucian build. I've just got way too many requests from these guys, and it's riddled throughout solo queue, and some people just don't understand why it's so strong, so I thought I'd elaborate. And since I'm your faithful theory crafting servant, I will oblige while stalking some Koreans. Let's get into it. What's the new build? So I'm going to explain each individual item and how it's strong and why it synergizes with Lucian. Yomi's Ghostblade. Now we start with Yomi's. Now the reason this is such a powerful first pick is due to the fact it gives us CDR, AD and most importantly armor pen. Now as seen below, Lucian normally gets Essence Reaver, and if you compare the two you'll really see why Yomi's is just so much better. With Essence it takes forever to get CDR to scale, and it doesn't really give us any pen. This means that we've got to land crits, we've got to auto attack to do damage, and yet the chance of getting a lot of crits is inconsistent overall, because not every auto is going to be a crit, whereas the pen on Ghostblade is statically there. Ghostblade gives us the early pen, which basically is far more consistent, and also means that our abilities, say you're poking with your Q, is way more consistent and doing tons more damage. Since most of Lucian's early game is about just chipping them down slowly with abilities and bursting them down with abilities rather than auto attacks, this is the main reason why Ghostblade is just such a more powerful first pick. On top of this, Ghostblade's passive gives us extra outplay, cheese and kite potential, and of course most importantly dueling prowess with the extra increased damage. On top of all this, it is even cheaper by Essence Reaver by 400 gold, so it's more effective, it has more stats on it, it's more useful with your abilities, and it's cheaper. Black Cleaver. So first let's look at the stats. We get HP. Now this is one that's very massively undervalued in my opinion. HP trumps damage early game. That's actually a statistical fact. Or basically speaking, if you're running versus a Maokai top who gets pure HP and he still beats you with his base damage, that's essentially what's happening here. Now of course the AD carries, you've got to take it with a pinch of salt, but let's look into it. This allows Lucian to go in more easily because he's got more tankiness early game. If ahead, this makes you extremely hard to burst, and this also means that Lucian, who has to jump into his enemy's face quite heavily, is a little bit more durable, which means you can do more damage. We also get AD, more damage, and of course we get the 20% CDR. This basically means with two items with 30% CDR, and that's pretty early. With 30% CDR, we're going to have our abilities up pretty much on a semi-permanent basis. Now Black Cleaver has two passives. I'll explain the first one, which is Rage. This gives additional movement speed for dealing physical damage to an enemy. Basically this allows us to chase down and kite more easily. If ahead, there's just no getting away from Lucian with this, and if you're behind as well, it also means you can kite it a little bit more easily. Most importantly, the second unique passive of Black Cleaver. On dealing physical damage, you reduce an enemy's armor by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 6 times for a maximum of 30% penetration. Now 30% is an important number. It's as much pen as a last whisper. Black Cleaver is also easily stacked by Lucian. Your passive stacks it quite easily with your double shot, as does your ultimate for each bullet hit. This means Lucian ultimate is a tank strider to a mass degree. Adding Ghostblade's stat pen, base stat pen, there's no armor just isn't there, it's non-existent to you. You have to remember the main weakness of Lucian is you get ahead and people stack armor and then your abilities don't do too much and you have to focus on just the squishy targets. With this build that's just not the case. You can focus tanks, you can focus backliners, you have the ability to blow them both up, and generally speaking with the Essence Reaver build you've got to get Last Whisper later on, and you really, armor just counters you for at least 25-30 minutes into the game. With this build, that's not the case. There's no way of nullifying Lucian's bar spike. It can also deal with tanks, and everything about it is just beautiful. After this we get CDR bits for that max 40% CDR in our abilities. That's in your third item, you already have max CDR, beautiful. After this we get an attack speed item. Normally this is Phantom Dance if you want to duel a bit more, or Rapid Fire if you want to burst at long range as well, perfectly fine, both of them. Finally, we either get IE for the insane burst, Bloodthirster for the AD burst and sustain sort of build, or Mercurial for a little bit of safety. It kind of matches the IE blood together, and of course gives you that all-important QSS active, which is going to help you out really heavily in surviving. Generally, IE Mercurial is for the most part what I pick up, but it really is dependent upon yourself. Now, a big strength of this build that many aren't mentioning is the fact you don't need Last Whisper. Now, this basically means that normally you have to consume an item slot just for the penetration, and the stats on it aren't really that great. You're just getting it to go through armor, and preferably, most people would not want to buy this item. With Black Cleaver, you already do as much 30% armor penetration as Last Whisper does, and on top of that we get the 20 base and Ghostblade, which is more than enough. You don't need any more pen. Any more pen would be a little bit waste mathematically speaking, and generally speaking, you don't really need that much. Going through most of the armor is generally fine. Now you can get Last Whisper, you don't need it though. You can actually ignore Last Whisper and pick up something else, like an IE, you can pick up a Bloodthirster, Mercurial, whatever the hell you want. This is a really nice pickup, and this is a point that not too many people are appreciating. Finally, we also don't really need a hard defensive item. Of course, it depends on the composition, but generally, if you're versus a comp you're not too scared of, they're just a normal comp, you can just go Mercurial and you can do fine. That is generally enough. Since Black Cleaver gives you a little bit of natural innate tankiness, and of course, you're doing so much damage on your abilities, you're going to be running over people for the most part. Generally, most people only can pick up a Mercurial. They don't have to go for something really heavily defensive like you normally do in Lucian to try and survive jumping into your enemy's face, essentially. One last note, you can go Death Stance. I've seen a lot of help with this. Since you're going a very caster-oriented build, you're going to be consuming and vamping a lot of HP just with your abilities. With this amount of CDR, this could make Death Stance pretty viable, assuming you're actually pretty far ahead. You do more damage and you'll sustain up more than your enemy can generally do, assuming you get ahead once more. Let's compare. Now, let's compare Yumi's Black Cleaver Korean build with the Essence Reaver Rapid Fire. I was trying to explain this as a single entity on the outside, but in saying this, I felt that comparing is probably the best way to show you why it's so strong. So collectively, Black Cleaver and Ghostblade provide 115 AD, 30% CDR, 45 attack speed, while Ghostblade is active, 300 HP, 20 flat armor penetration off the Ghostblade, 30% armor pen assuming Black Cleaver is fully stacked, 20% movement speed assuming Ghostblade is on, and the total cost is 6,300 gold. Whereas Essence Reaver and Rapid Fire build provides 65 AD, 30% CDR, 30% attack speed, 50% critical strike chance, and of course 5% movement speed. Finally, you also get a ranged auto attack and a slight burst on that Rapid Fire active for 50 to 160 damage. We're talking about early game, so I'm going to say it's about 80. Total cost 6,200 gold. As you can see, comparably for just 100 gold more, because the Korean build, although cheaper at the start, is a little bit more expensive due to Black Cleaver, is just generally better. Now, unfortunately, I will compare them both here. The Korean build is kind of difficult, and a lot of it is predicted on getting the Black Cleaver stacks, and of course, using Ghostblade effectively. Now, I will say that, but on the other end, Essence Reaver and Rapid Fire is inconsistent as well. Since you won't always crit, and you've got to actually auto attack to do abilities, you're going to have a bit of a hard time. The upfront burst and your poke potential on your abilities is a lot less with the Essence Fire build, and you're a lot more squishy as well. You're going to get beaten up a lot easier. Additionally, if you just get armor, there's no real pen in this on the Essence Reaver build pretty much at all, so you're done for. This is the reason why the Black Cleaver build, as you can see, just for 100 extra gold has so much more stats, and in my opinion, a lot more effective. Why is it strong? More ability burst. This build means your abilities are doing way more than they normally would do. The Essence Reaver build is limited in terms of the amount of damage it does with abilities. With the sheer amount of pen you get from Ghostblade and of course Black Cleaver as well, and the extra AD it provides, it means that basically you'll be able to do more straight up burst damage, which of course is what always we're looking for. Gives tanks shred. This build goes through tanks like butter. Normally crit and burst based builds on Lucian are strong, but when the tanks finally inevitably do get armor, he has a hard time dealing with them. So with the sheer amount of pen you get, you can actually shred tanks. This is a first time pretty much ever for Lucian. Shred armor all round. Generally, you just remove armor as a major factor versus yourself for pretty much any enemy, it doesn't matter who they are. Cheaper earlier than the Essence Reaver build. This is a pretty major factor. You do get this slightly earlier power spikes a little bit more effectively, although it does slightly hurt a little bit more later on for 100 extra gold. You get a lot more stats for it, and it's just generally very gold effective. Get a little tanky early. Due to Black Cleaver, you're naturally a little bit more tanky with that phase than you normally would be when it comes to early game Lucian. This actually gives you a multitude of advantages. You can go in a little bit more harder than you normally would do. Now, generally the weakness of Lucian is jumping into your enemy's face and getting blown up. With this build, it's a little bit harder to do that. Good kite and chase. Black Cleaver's movement speed on hit and Ghostblade will make you nearly uncatchable, or of course a freak train if you're going aggressive and trying to get away from Lucian. These 2 points make you a kite and chase god. This is the reason why this build additionally also snowballs heavily, which I will mention in Snowballs Heavily. Now, due to the points above, this build is extra durability, earlier power spikes that allow you to snowball more heavily than the Essence Reaver build. And you can also just poke down with abilities a lot more effectively, and Essence Reaver build is just less effective on that. You've got to go all in. Even building armor won't stop the snowball. It both allows you to snowball more heavily early game, and additionally on top of that, it also means that stopping the snowball and cutting it off with the armor you normally get versus ADs is not going to work. This means that stopping Lucian is kind of like stopping a freight train. It's not going to be too likely. You've got to derail him, and that takes a lot of ganks and so much resources spent towards him, which can put his team in a really bad spot. This is just the main point of this build. It just snowballs so unbelievably heavily. Once you've got a Lucian who's healthier than your support, doing you've got Pen, he's going through your support like nothing. They can't even run up, and he's bursting you down with all his abilities. There's really nothing you can do. Adding the additional movement speed in Ghostblade and Black Cleaver, when he's ahead, he'll just run at you, chase you down with the movement speed, and there's nothing you can do about it. Lets you avoid Last Whisper. Now, you still can get Last Whisper, but of course, as I've mentioned, it's not needed assuming you're using Black Cleaver correctly. You can actually avoid Last Whisper and get another AD based item, which is a first for Lucian really in many AD carries. Your matchup is, with the Armor Pen and Black Cleaver, is 30%. Add in the 20 flat plane to Ghostblade, it's enough versus pretty much any tank unless it's Rammus or Malvite, assuming they haven't went insanely big armor builds. Lastly, your ultimate is actually useful. Now, normally most players kind of agree that Lucian's ultimate, as the game progresses, turns into a little bit of a joke. Now, mid to late game, Lucian's ultimate has been nicknamed the Dulling rather than the Culling. Pretty funny, but it's true. With this actual build, your ultimate is pretty effective. It actually shreds crap tons of armor for every single bullet hit from your ultimate. So basically, you almost immediately get full Black Cleaver stacks, remove 30% armor, and then on top of that, you're getting movement speed from the Black Cleaver, and Ghostblade gets you the extra pen on top of that. Your ultimate is absolutely disgusting with this. You can go through HP like it's nobody's business. It really is extremely powerful. Finally, one last note before I end this, your ultimate does not scale with Youmuu's attack speed like it used to. I see some people still doing this. So don't activate Ghostblade when your ultimate's basically active. Use it for after the fight. The extra movement speed and attack... Movement speed is helpful. The attack speed is essentially useless, so you'll be wasting the active for the most part. Try to use it afterwards if you can. And that's it for the video, guys. I know a couple of other YouTubers already covered this, but I got asked to reiterate this a couple of other times. A lot of these guys explicitly asked for me to do it, and there's just too many requests for me to kind of ignore it. But I hope the video helped, guys. If you like it, dislike it, dislike it. If you like the content, you can subscribe. If you think it's horrible and I've really dropped the ball here, you can unsub. I am totally fair. I also stream on twitch.tv, guys. The link will be in the low bar. I bring educational and fun content, and I'd love to see you there. Beyond that, guys, have a great day. Best luck in the Rift, and I'll see you guys next time.